Hey there. So, sustainable real estate. It's everywhere these days, right?
Yeah, it's definitely a hot topic.
We're diving into it today. With this podcast outline called Building the Future, Sustainable Real Estate Insights, I've been seeing all this stuff about green buildings and eco-friendly construction.
hmm
And I have to admit, I'm kind of curious. What does it all actually mean?
Well, it really changes how we think about buildings. It's about the whole lifespan of the building, like from the design and construction
hmm
all the way to like how it's used and eventually, demolished.
It's more than just a trend. It's really a new way of approaching the whole process.
They keep using this term green building in the outline.
Yeah.
So what exactly makes a building green? Is it just like slapping some solar panels on the roof?
Oh, it's way more than just solar panels,
Yeah.
although those are a big part of it. A green building, it's designed to be energy efficient in every way, really.
Mhm.
Think about it. LED lighting, super efficient heating and cooling systems,
Yeah.
using sustainable materials, even like minimizing waste during construction.
Yeah.
All of that plays a role. So it's not just about the building itself. Then it's
Yeah.
like the whole process. They mention using things like recycled steel and reclaimed wood,
Right.
which, sounds great. But
Mhm.
are those materials actually as good as using like the traditional options?
Oh, they can be even better. Like reclaimed wood, a lot of times that comes from those old growth forests.
Right. So it means it's like denser and more durable than lumber that comes from younger trees.
Exactly. And think about recycled steel. It's just as strong as brand new steel, but the carbon footprint is way lower.
Makes sense. Now, this one I got to ask about hempcrete.
Oh, yeah.
Are we seriously talking about building with hemp here?
We are, and it's becoming more and more popular, actually.
Wow.
It's this lightweight insulating material made from hemp fibers. It's biodegradable, it's fire resistant, and even helps regulate humidity.
That's wild.
Now, it's not as structurally strong as concrete, but it's great for walls, insulation. And for you as a homeowner, that could mean lower costs, a healthier home, and less impact on the environment.
Okay, you're really making me rethink what's possible with construction. This is exciting stuff.
Yeah.
Water conservation is another big one they mention in here.
hmm
Low flow fixtures, okay? Those are pretty common now. But rainwater harvesting, if that's something homeowners can realistically do.
It's getting easier all the time, and surprisingly, pretty affordable too. You're basically collecting the rainwater from your roof, storing it in these tanks.
Then you can use it for things like watering your garden, even flushing toilets.
Exactly.
So you're like creating your own little mini water recycling system.
Right.
What about indoor air quality? The outline mentions that green buildings are healthier. How so?
Well, those traditional building materials,
Mm.
they can have all sorts of chemicals and toxins that can really mess with air quality.
Right.
But green buildings, they use non-toxic paints, adhesives, finishes.
They often have really fancy ventilation systems that bring in fresh air and filter out all the pollutants. So breathing easy and avoiding those new construction smells.
Exactly.
Now I'm seeing a lot of certifications mentioned. LEED, BREEAM.
Yeah.
It's a lot.
Yeah.
Do I really need to memorize all these acronyms?
No, you don't need to memorize them. Think of them like a quality stamp. They just make sure that a building meets certain standards for sustainability.
Right. So less about knowing all the acronyms and more about just understanding that, hey, there are independent organizations out there making sure the building is actually green. Got it. Like checking for that seal of approval.
Exactly.
Speaking of approval, they talk about some pretty awesome benefits in this outline, and not just for the planet. Lower costs, healthier living, even higher property values. For real. Or is this too good to be true?
No, they're very real. Especially, over time, green buildings might cost a bit more up front, but they can save you money in the long run. Lower energy bills, lower water bills, it all adds up. And that healthier indoor air, that means fewer allergies, fewer respiratory problems, less sick time, maybe even more productive.
That's promising.
Yeah.
But, are there any downsides, like challenges to think about?
Oh, of course. Like anything, there are always trade-offs. One of the biggest challenges, that initial cost.
Uh-huh.
Building green or even retrofitting an existing building to be more sustainable. It can be expensive up front. It's an investment, one that pays off over time, but it takes planning and budgeting.
Okay, makes sense. Like any major home improvement, really, you got to weigh those costs and benefits.
Yeah.
So we've covered the basics of green buildings.
Right.
Now let's get into some of the cool innovations that are like pushing the boundaries even further. The outline has some really interesting examples. Let's start with hempcrete. We talked about it earlier, but
Yeah.
do you think it's just a niche thing, or could it actually become mainstream?
I think it's definitely gaining traction, especially
Right.
with more people realizing how good it is for the environment.
Hmm.
It's still pretty new compared to, traditional concrete. But as production increases and the costs come down,
Yeah.
yeah.
I think we'll see it used a lot more, especially for homes, from hemp houses
Uh-huh.
to wooden skyscrapers.
Mm.
The outline mentions cross-laminated timber, CLT.
Right.
They describe it as like giant wood Legos
Mm-hmm.
used to build entire structures. Are we talking about skyscrapers made of wood?
Mm.
Is that the future of our cities?
CLT is super strong, lightweight, and renewable. We're already seeing it being used for those mid-rise buildings.
Right? And as engineers keep, coming up with new ideas,
Yeah.
taller woody structures are definitely becoming a reality.
Oh, yeah. There are still engineering challenges, like making sure they're fire resistant and structurally sound when you go that high.
Mm.
But researchers and architects are working on some really innovative solutions, like special fire resistant coatings, advanced structural designs. It's so cool. It's amazing how even those traditional materials are getting like a sustainable makeover. They talk about some innovative uses of recycled concrete and plastic. What are the trade-offs there? Any limitations we should know about?
Well, they can be just as good as the original materials,
Mm-hmm.
but there are things to think about. For example, recycled concrete, they can crush it up and use it as aggregate in new concrete mixes.
Right.
So that means you need less new material. And they're putting recycled plastic into everything, from insulation to floor tiles.
Yeah. The key is making sure that they meet the same performance standards as the traditional materials. You
Yeah.
want to make sure that they've been processed and tested properly.
So it's not just about using less material, it's about using smarter materials.
Absolutely.
Speaking of smart, let's talk tech. The outline dives into all these smart systems like IoT-enabled energy management, smart irrigation systems.
Hmm.
How much of a difference can those really make?
Oh, they're really changing how we think about building efficiency. Imagine your building automatically adjusts its lighting and temperature
No.
based on who's there and the weather outside. Or an irrigation system that only waters your lawn when it actually needs it based on real-time moisture readings in the soil. These smart systems can really optimize resource use, minimize waste, and save you money. That's next-level efficiency. Last but not least, something I've always been curious about.
Yeah.
Green roofs. Are those rooftop gardens with solar panels built in? Are those just a fantasy? Or is that something a regular homeowner could actually have?
Green roofs are getting more and more common.
Yeah.
For good reason. They've got tons of benefits, like reducing stormwater runoff. They provide insulation, improve air quality. They could be beautiful spaces.
Right.
And adding solar panels just makes sense. You generate clean energy right there on your roof.
That's amazing, turning your roof into an eco-friendly power plant.
Exactly. It's not just a fantasy. It's real, and it's becoming more affordable all the time. Okay, we've covered the green side of things, but the outline also mentions sustainable investing in real estate. Can you break that down? What does that even mean?
Yeah. So sustainable real estate investing, it's all about putting your money into projects that are environmentally responsible. And not just that, they should have a positive social and environmental impact too.
Right.
And of course, also bring in financial returns.
So it's like investing with your values in mind.
Yeah.
What would be some examples of sustainable real estate investments?
Let's see. You could invest in energy efficient buildings like those with LEED certification,
Okay.
or you could support developers who prioritize, renewable energy or eco-friendly construction.
Got it. So you're not just buying a building, you're buying into a whole philosophy.
Exactly.
They talk a lot about ESG in these notes.
Yeah.
Can you tell me more about what that is? Is it something like I need to worry about as a potential investor?
ESG stands for environmental, social, and governance. It's basically a set of criteria that investors are using more and more.
Huh.
Instead of just focusing on the financial return, they're looking at the bigger picture.
So it's about making sure your investments are like doing good for the world,
Yeah.
not just making money.
Exactly. It's about making sure your investments align with your values. So in real estate, ESG means thinking about the environmental and social impact of those investments.
Okay.
For example, does this building use energy efficiently? Does it create a healthy and inclusive space for its tenants? Is the developer committed to ethical labor practices? These are all part of ESG.
Makes sense. Here's the million-dollar question, though.
Okay.
Do sustainable investments actually make financial sense?
It's a good question. And, more and more research is showing that they often do.
Really?
Yeah. Green buildings, they tend to have lower operating costs because they're so energy efficient,
Yeah.
and that means higher net operating income for investors. Plus, they often attract better tenants who are willing to pay more for sustainable spaces.
So it's not a choice between values and financial goals. You can do both. We talked about innovations in green building earlier, but the outline also mentions this idea of sustainable cities. It's amazing to think that it's not just about individual buildings anymore.
Right.
It's about transforming entire cities.
It's a global movement now. We're seeing cities all over the world trying out these really innovative strategies to reduce their environmental impact and create more livable spaces.
Wow, that's so cool.
Yeah.
What are some examples of those strategies? Like, how are they making cities more sustainable?
Well, one big focus is transportation.
Okay.
A lot of cities are investing in public transportation, bike lanes, making things more pedestrian friendly to reduce the need for cars, you know?
That makes sense. Less traffic means less pollution, better quality of life for everyone.
Exactly. And it not only cuts down on greenhouse gas emissions, but it also makes cities healthier and more enjoyable to live in.
It's like a win-win-win.
Exactly.
What about green spaces? It seems like cities are finding all these creative ways to bring nature into the urban landscape.
Oh, absolutely. Parks, urban forests, rooftop gardens.
Yeah.
They're not just pretty to look at. They have real environmental benefits. They improve air quality. They help reduce the urban heat island effect.
Okay, I've heard that term before.
Yeah.
Urban heat island effect.
Yeah.
But I'm not really sure what it means. Can you explain it?
Of course. It's basically this thing where cities are much warmer than the areas around them, like the countryside.
Right.
Right.
That's because of all the concrete and asphalt
Yeah.
which soak up the heat,
Uh.
and there's not enough vegetation to cool things down.
Exactly. It's like the cities are trapping all the heat, which makes them even hotter.
Oh, wow.
And this can have big consequences, especially during heat waves. Right?
Need more energy for cooling? People are uncomfortable. It can even cause health problems.
That's right. But those green spaces, they help fight that heat island effect. They provide shade. They reduce the amount of heat those surfaces absorb.
It's amazing how something as simple as planting trees or creating a rooftop garden can make a real difference.
Yeah, it's about creating these healthier, more resilient cities for everyone.
We've seen how this sustainable thinking is changing buildings and entire cities. This is all super inspiring. But, I mean, what about the rest of us? Most of us aren't city planners or real estate developers,
Right.
but we still want to be part of this change. What can we do to contribute?
That's a great question. I think the most important thing is to stay informed and engaged. Stay up to date on the local policies, initiatives for sustainable development,
Okay.
support the candidates and the policies that promote green building, energy efficiency, sustainable transportation.
As we were saying before, voting with your dollars and supporting businesses that are committed to sustainability.
Exactly. Advocate for more green spaces in your community, participate in local planning meetings, make your voice heard.
So it's about taking those individual actions, making those conscious choices in our everyday lives, and supporting businesses and policies that align with our values.
Exactly. All those little actions, they add up. Choose to walk, bike, take public transportation whenever you can. Support your local farmers markets, businesses that prioritize sustainability.
It's a good reminder that we all have a part to play in building a more sustainable future, no matter where we live or what we do. It's empowering to know that we have a voice, that we can make a difference through our choices and actions.
Absolutely. Every decision, every action has an impact. We have the power to create the future that we want to see.
Okay, so let's recap everything we've talked about with sustainable real estate.
Yeah.
It's obvious that this isn't just some fad.
Yeah.
It's changing how we, design, build, even think about building.
Exactly. It's a real shift in how people see things, both, within the industry and just regular folks like you.
So what would you say is the most important thing to remember from all this?
The biggest thing, I think, is that sustainable real estate isn't just about saving the planet, although obviously that's a huge plus. It's that green buildings have real benefits for everyone. Lower costs, a healthier place to live, might even boost your property value.
And it goes beyond just buying or building green, right?
Right.
It's also about how you invest your money. Sustainable investing seems to be really taking off.
Oh, it totally is. More and more investors are realizing that you can do good for the planet and make money at the same time.
So you're not just making a profit, you're making a difference.
Exactly.
We talked about sustainable investing earlier, along with ESG. Can you remind me, what exactly is ESG? And how does it relate to real estate?
ESG stands for environmental, social, and governance. It's kind of like a framework, helps investors figure out, how sustainable and ethical their investments are.
Hmm.
So in real estate,
Right.
it means looking at things like how energy efficient is the building? What's its impact on the community? Is the developer doing things the right way, in terms of labor practices?
Exactly. It's about looking at the whole picture, not just the bottom line. So it's a more holistic way of sizing up an investment.
Exactly. You're not just looking at the numbers, but also the impact it's having.
So what are some specific types of sustainable real estate investments that someone could look into?
Oh, there are tons of options. You could invest directly in those super energy efficient buildings, like LEED certified ones,
Hmm.
or support developers who are committed to, sustainable building practices. Or you could look into REITs. Those are real estate investment trusts that focus on green buildings.
Okay.
And then there are green bonds, which are specifically to fund those sustainable projects. That's a growing market too.
It's like a whole new financial world just springing up around
Yeah.
sustainable real estate. But realistically, how do these investments perform, compared to traditional real estate investments?
That's a great question. And what we're seeing is that more often than not, they do just as well, if not better.
Oh, wow.
Green buildings, they usually have lower operating costs because they're so efficient, and that means more net income for investors. Plus, they often attract those higher quality tenants who are willing to pay a bit more to live or work in a sustainable space.
So it's not like you have to choose between doing good and making money. You can actually have both. Earlier, we talked about, those cool innovations in green buildings.
Yeah.
But this podcast outline also brings up sustainable cities. It's mind-blowing to think that it's not just about individual buildings anymore.
Yeah.
It's about, changing entire cities.
Absolutely. It's become this global movement. Cities all over the world are implementing these innovative strategies, to lessen their impact on the environment and create better places to live for everyone.
What are some of those strategies? How are they actually doing that?
Well, one of the main things they're focusing on is transportation.
Okay.
A lot of cities are putting money into public transportation, bike lanes, making things more pedestrian friendly, basically anything to reduce the number of cars on the road.
That just makes sense. Less traffic, less pollution.
Yeah.
Everyone's quality of life improves.
Exactly. It not only reduces those greenhouse gases, but also it makes those cities healthier and more enjoyable for the people who live there.
It's like a win-win-win.
Absolutely.
What about green spaces? It seems like, cities are getting really creative with how they're bringing nature into these urban landscapes.
Oh, yeah. Parks, urban forests, rooftop gardens, those aren't just there to look pretty.
Right.
They have real tangible benefits for the environment. Like they help clean the air, reduce what's called the urban heat island effect.
Okay, I've heard that term before, urban heat island effect, but I don't really get what it means. Can you explain it?
Sure. It's this phenomenon where cities get way hotter than the areas surrounding them, like the suburbs or countryside.
Okay.
It's because cities have so much concrete and asphalt, which absorbs and traps heat. And there's not enough greenery to, naturally cool things down.
It's like the city is holding on to all that heat.
Exactly. It can have some pretty serious effects, especially during heat waves. You end up needing more energy for cooling. People are uncomfortable. It can even lead to health problems.
Oh, I didn't realize it was that big of a deal.
Yeah. But green spaces, they help combat that. They provide shade. They reduce the amount of heat absorbed by all those surfaces.
That's so interesting. It's amazing how something as simple as planting trees or having a rooftop garden can actually make a difference.
Yeah. It's all about creating these healthier, more resilient cities, for everyone.
So we've seen how sustainable thinking is changing individual buildings and entire cities. It's all really inspiring. But what about the rest of us? Most of us aren't city planners or real estate developers,
All right.
but we still want to be part of this transformation. So what can we do to contribute?
That's such a good question. I think the most important thing is to stay informed and engaged with what's happening in your community. Stay up to date on those local policies and initiatives for sustainable development. Support the candidates and the policies that promote, things like green building, energy efficiency, sustainable transportation.
So like we were saying before, putting your money where your mouth is.
Yeah.
Supporting those businesses that are committed to sustainability.
Exactly. And advocate for more green spaces in your community. Go to those local planning meetings and make your voice heard.
So it's about taking those individual actions. making conscious choices in our everyday lives, right?
Mhm.
Supporting the businesses and policies that match up with our values.
Absolutely. All those small actions, they really do add up. Like choose to walk, bike, take public transportation whenever you can. Support those local farmers markets, businesses that put sustainability first.
It's a good reminder that we all have a role to play in building a more sustainable future.
Absolutely.
It doesn't matter where we live or what we do.
Yeah.
And it's empowering to know that, we have a voice, that we can make a difference through the choices we make, the actions we take.
I completely agree. Every decision, every action has an impact. We really do have the power to create the future that we want.
It's amazing to think that something as small as choosing to walk instead of driving or supporting a local business can actually help build a more sustainable future.
Yeah, it all comes down to those individual choices, right? Those small everyday things, they really add up. It's a good reminder that we all play a part in creating a better world.
So we've explored all these different things, those green building features, innovative materials, how to invest sustainably, even the concept of like sustainable cities. What's that one big takeaway, that one impactful thing you want listeners to remember?
The biggest thing I'd say is that sustainable real estate's not this niche concept anymore. It's the future of how we build things. And what's really exciting is that everyone can be part of it.
Whether you're making choices as a homeowner, a renter, supporting those sustainable businesses, or looking into investments that, match your values, there are tons of ways to get involved.
Exactly. And like we've seen, it's not just about helping the planet. It's about creating these healthier, more resilient communities where everyone benefits.
This whole deep dive has been eye-opening, seriously.
Mhm.
What's a final thought, something we can leave listeners with, something that kind of builds on everything we've talked about, but maybe pushes them to think even bigger?
Well, we've talked a lot about how building sustainably can create those healthier and more efficient spaces.
Hmm.
But what if we took that same thinking and applied it to other parts of our lives? Like, how do we make transportation more sustainable, our food systems, how we produce energy?
Whoa, those are some huge questions.
Yeah.
But, they're important to think about. If we can reimagine how we build the world around us so it works with the planet and like our own well-being,
Yeah.
then we can definitely reimagine other parts of our world too, right?
Absolutely. It starts by asking those questions, challenging the status quo, and being willing to think outside the box.
I think that's a perfect place to wrap things up. It's been amazing exploring the world of sustainable real estate with you.
The pleasure was all mine. Thanks for having me.
And to everyone listening, thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Hope you learned a lot and feel inspired. And remember, the future is what we make it. So let's build it sustainably.